Hi, my name is Carter Razink, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of DropChain. Today, we're going to talk about how can you swap tokens or NFTs between two different people, or you and a user, using the DropChain API. This is a good example of something like if you want to create a Web3 marketplace, you can use this endpoint. Or you want to create a way for your users of your Web3 app to trade items. This is a great use case of that. Maybe it's them just going to you and to I'm going to give you 100 gold and you're going to give me a sword. Exactly like that. This infrastructure allows you to build a really cool Web3 app without needing to know anything about smart contracts. You can build both no code and code, but for this example, we're going to show you how to use JavaScript. And so in this example, there's a few pieces. There's two main ones though. For every time you want to send a transaction through the DropChain API, you need to have your API key, which you get from setting up your account on dropchain.network and using the quick start guide. So if you haven't done that yet, I strongly recommend doing that. And then you just hit generate API key. I'm using this as an educational piece, so this is going to be deleted by the time you see this, but just hit generate API key. And if you do expose your API key, make sure you delete it and make a new one. You need to make sure that this is secure because it's essentially keys to your account. And so you want to make sure that's secure, keep this close. And if you ever expose it, just delete it and make a new one. And then it'll also show you how to use your test accounts. And so we're going to use some of these test accounts. We're going to take user 1 and user 2. And we have actually already made some NFTs to try, but before we go into it further, we're going to kind of overview of the information we have to include to do this transaction. And so the first things first, you need to include your app ID. That's the truth with every single request. And then you also need to include information about the assets being traded. And so the way this goes is you have two users here at the bottom, user 1 and user 2. And user 1 and user 2 are the two people going into this swap, this trade. User 1 is including asset 1 and asset 1 amount. That's what they're giving. User 2 is giving asset 2 ID and giving asset 2 amount. And so this is the number of the asset ID, which is a unique identifier for your asset. Both of these are unique identifiers. They can be the same, maybe you're swapping the same asset or different assets, and then the same amount or different amounts, not a problem. And then user 1 and user 2, normally, basically every time you do this swap, user 1 is going to be receiver 2, because user 1 is sending it to receiver 2, and user 2 is going to be receiver 1. And so basically, you're going to have whatever this is, it's going to be swapped because user 1 is sending it, sending the thing to user 2, which is receiver 1. And we'll kind of explain this more, but basically these are going to be the opposite because user 1 is going to be swapping it to another account, the other account swapping it back to the user 1. And so we'll show you how this works. We have the DropChain tutorial app that we're showing off. We've been showing off everything throughout this. We're currently on the asset swap flow. And then this transaction, or this before we go into it super deep, the atomic swap testnet is being sent back to our backend, which is our atomic swap testnet. And then that's being sent with our API key to the API backend. Now, you can do this without doing the backend server, but we have a backend server set up for you. The link below shows you not only how to set up your DropChain account, but it also shows you how to set up this environment, and it's less than 10 minutes to get started. So I would recommend doing that. Otherwise, feel free to follow along and integrate this as you would like. So let's try to go back to the asset swap. So before we go into any more detail, you need your app ID. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to put it in here. And we're going to fill in the asset IDs we're using. So we've used the asset mint function before to mint 2 NFTs already, each with their unique asset IDs. We have minted DropChain NFT, where we showed how to mint an NFT and how to send it to someone else. That's a tutorial below as well. And then the other one was a freeze NFT, where we minted an NFT and we sent it to someone else, and then we froze it so they couldn't move it. This is great for like concert tickets, for example, if you don't want people to be able to resell. And then they tried to move it, it didn't work. We unfroze it, and then they tried to move it, and it worked. And so we used two different assets for this. And so currently, user one, my test user one, right here, OZD, owns the DropChain NFT, and my test user 2, AAX, owns the Freeze NFT. And what we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to swap them. And so we're going to go back here. We're going to take ID 1. This is going to be the first asset ID because user 1 owns it. We're going to put it in right there. We're going to send 1 because we only have one that exists in this context. But if you had like a bunch of them, you would need to include the number you're sending and then the decimals as well after that. So if you had like $1, you would do 100 because you'd have 1 and then 10 and 100ths, and it'd be 100 units, but it'd be worth you'd sending one token. But that's we have that kind of explained within the asset mint, how to mint your first NFT. So we're going to take that, and we're going to also take the Freeze NFT, which has the exact same sort of setup here, where there's 1, there's 0 decimals, and we're going to just fill that in with the new asset ID. So take that, we're going to do 1 here, and so user 1 is going to be the person who's sending the first token, which is my test user 1, and then user 2 is test user 2. And so user 1 is going to send it to user 2. And so receiver 1 is going to be test user 2. And really what this means is user 1 is sending it to receiver 1. User 2 is sending it to receiver 2. And so these are just flipped. User 1 is going to be receiver 2. Oops. And user 2 is going to be receiver 1. Transaction note, you don't really have to worry about. Session tokens, you don't have to worry about until you want to launch your app for public use. So this is good. I'm just going to hit save, and because we're running the DropChain tutorial app, we're going to go to localhost asset-swap. And there we go. We're going to hit send request. And really what this is doing is it's taking 2 transactions, me sending you 1 NFT, and you sending me 1 NFT, and then combining them. And so they only go through if both of them go through at the same time. So we have 1 transaction ID. So let's take a look here. If we go on the testnet and we look at the group ID, which is the group of transactions, we'll see that MQSK is sending 1 DropChain NFT to AKED, which is MQSK, user test user 1, is sending it to AKED, test user 2. That's exactly what we expect. And the same opposite is AKED, test user 2, is sending it to MQSK, test user 1. And so just like that, we swapped a DropChain NFT for a Freeze NFT, which allows you to build really cool marketplaces, transactions, integrations for maybe a game where you got to go to a merchant and exchange goods for services or whatever, trading of assets and NFTs. You can integrate all of this into your Web2 app and turn it into a Web3 app. No smart contracts needed, no special knowledge, no expertise in any of that. And that's it. You can build really robust Web3 apps using just the DropChain API in conventional API calls. You can build this no code, which we have with Bubble. We have tutorials in that. Check out our YouTube below or create a free account. We have tutorials out there showing you how to do this. Create a free account, like I said, on dropchain.network to get started. And then join the Discord. I and my co-founder are in there. We live in there helping other builders like yourself build their first Web3 apps. And maybe you want to use the asset swap. Happy to answer any questions if you have any, and if you have any issues, we're more than happy to walk you through that. So please join the community. Thank you.